Module 5, Tutorial C, we're going to make a narrative news game type interactive, right? And so we're going to do it on Twine, right? So you have to go to twinery.org. Now you can download it on your desktop. We don't have to. We're just going to use it in our browser. So let's just select Use in Browser. So of course we need a new story. We'll put new, and we're going to call this Surviving Migration and hit Create. So this is kind of our working area here, and I can kind of move around. It puts in our first passage and denotes that it's the home passage. You could always change it later if you really wanted to, but I don't know why you would not just start with the first one. Sometimes maybe you decide you want to start somewhere else. So before we go into anything, we have to go into story and details. And so we have to make sure we're using a specific story format. So these story formats are like these markdown languages that power Twine, and there's a bunch of them. The default is Harlow and this newest version of Harlow, but we're going to go ahead and change to Chatbook 2.3.1 just because the language is a little terser, so we don't have to type as much. So I'm going to change there. How do you learn these things? Well, you just Google for the documentation. So here I have a link in our tutorial of the Chatbook documentation where you can see how do I format text and how do I don't know, do things, delayed text, right? You can have something delay. So you can look through this for all the capabilities before you start working. But we're just going to again use that, and let's go back to passage. So let's double click on our first untitled passage and let's say rename it, and we'll call that start. We'll hit OK. And then we write everything in here. Now this can help you put in things, right? If you say, oh, I want to put in a link, right? It'll help you to write the stuff. But of course I have a tutorial already written here. So let's go find our start here. So just looking at our structure, right? We're going to start, well, we'll just go through it and you'll see how it goes. So the first thing we're going to do is define variables. We're going to, the whole part of the story is we're trying to get our bird in a reasonable amount of time with a reasonable amount of energy so it can have a successful nesting season, right? That's migration. So the first thing we're going to do is put in these starting variables, right? So these are, we've learned a little bit about variables by seeing JavaScript, same thing. It's going to, we're going to add and subtract from these variables as we go. The next thing we're going to do is, well, let's display these variables to the person as kind of like our energy bars and time bars, right? I mean, it's going to be just simple text. This thing is mostly simple text, although you can do some fancy stuff to make it not as much just simple text. But we'll put that there. And the next thing we want to put in is 2 dashes. And the dashes basically mean everything above it. Don't display that on the page, right? If I did this, I think it should show it on the page. See, we don't want to show that. This is logic stuff. That needs to be hidden. So let's put in these dash dash. And now if I put test from here, right, we don't see it. It's up here in our little config file. Great, get rid of that. Going back thing, now we have to start putting in our content that the person's going to see and read and move and make choices. So first we'll put a headline, right, and it's using this little markup, this little hexadecimal or octothorpe, right, denotes that it's the header. So all of these languages, Harlow, Chatbook, etc., put in some default CSS, right, that will style some things, and we'll see that in a second. Then let's put in an image, right, and so you see it's got this embed, it's an image, copy that, go to here, put that in, right. We could have, used these right here to help us put in whatever we want, sound effect, YouTube video. And then here's our content, right? Our content, each paragraph just needs to be on its own line. It's as simple as that, right? And then the last thing we need to do is give them something to click on to go to the next thing. So this basically defines that it's a link that goes to a new passage. And when you do this, it will automatically create the passage for you. So let me just grab that, go over here, put that in, and now notice, right, my departure got started. So let's just test from here, and now we see, right? We've got our image, we've got our title, we've got our kind of our game variables held, we've got a couple of sentences, and we've got this here. I want it on its own line, so let's just go ahead and put a space there. Test from here, right there it is, it's on its own line. So again, just watch that kind of stuff. Of course, it goes to the next page. We don't have anything on that next page. So let's go to departure. Well, we can close our start stuff. And so now let's just start cutting and pasting these things, and I'll point out anything really interesting. So here, just notice that we've added two new passages, so we have a choice. So we'll copy that, come here, paste that, right? It adds our things, the cross the Gulf or follow the coast. So we can, for cross the Gulf, right, we're going to, right, subtract some energy. So this is where something is happening, right? We're acting on our variables. So we're going to subtract 30 from our energy and add 1 day, right? We tell them a little bit about what happened, and then we send them to the next passage. So I'm going to come here, double click across the Gulf, click it, right? It has the stopover. I'm going to follow the coasts, right? We're same thing. We're changing. Energy's 20, days are 3, favorable winds. And now we're actually, right, this is kind of a bottleneck here, right? We branched and bottlenecked. So we're going to go to follow the coast, paste that in, right? And so now notice, right, you get to see the arrows going as we put our things. Let's go into our stopover. And so this is where, what about we can have various inputs, right? Some drop downs, some text inputs. When we definitely want them to pick select a certain thing, it's probably great to just use a drop down, right? So let's grab all of this. Now we're actually instantiating a very new variable called stopover days. So we'll grab that, and in stopover we'll paste that, right? Just to point out, right, we have this input here, right? We could say a cycling link, drop down link. I don't even know what a cycling link is. Oh, so you could choose through those, right? All right. So that is a drop down that we put on there. So the next one, right, we put in the next thing is going to be called rest. So they have to pick. They either rest 1 day up to 7 days. And then here, right, we take that variable, whatever they selected, their input, make sure it's a number and not text, right? We add that to days. Then, of course, we have this kind of modifier, however many days time energy, we give them 8 energy units for every day they stop. We make sure energy can't be above 100, right? So we just say if the energy is above 100, make sure it's 100, right? Again, you would have to read through the documentation on how to write this stuff, but we'll go ahead and grab this. We'll put it in rest, right? Close that. And then we have another choice, right? Are they going to just fly through the night, like this is the final push, or are they going to wait for daylight? So we'll grab that. Again, right, you're just making branches and things, right? So we'll branch and bottleneck again. So we'll have them do a night flight or a day flight, right? We see again, we're just, playing with energy and days. So for night flight, right, we'll add this one. For day flight, right, they take an extra day, but they have a little more energy, right? And so we see we're going to an evaluate. Evaluate's going to be our final one where we kind of figure out how well they've done. And so this is the hardest one here. This one takes a little while to read or to write, right? But this is you planning. You have to be planning your variables and what equals what. And I did that all in the back end, right? So these are like if statements. So it says if our energy is above or equal to 70 and days is less than or equal to 6, that's an early strong arrival, and then we kind of tell them, what that means. If energy is greater than or equal to 70 and days is greater than 6, right, it's a strong but late arrival. So right, again, just variations. This one is, right, about energy, right? So you don't have to have all of them in there. You just kind of figure out what states, right? These are creating states. So anyhow, let's just grab those, copy and paste it into the evaluate, right? And that's great. That'll work. That we should be able to now play our game. So let's actually stop for a second and do that. So let's go to start and let's test from there. And so here we can start playing with our thing, right? Begin our journey. I'm going to cross the gulf. I'll stop for a search stopover. I'll do 1 day of rest. Yep, I got to keep going. I'm going to fly through the night. See how it ends. I'm exhausted, right? So I have to recover before I can start defending my territory. So again, this is mostly a text-based thing, but you can use CSS. Obviously, you saw we can embed images and videos and things like that as we need it, but we can then use any CSS we want. Now, it's a little hinky, right, because these things like Chatbook and Harlow kind of have their own CSS in it, and you want to look through that for, they do give you some ways to help set that. I just did it the cheap and easy way, which was using a lot of important declarations to just make sure I'm overriding stuff. So I'm going to, again, whatever works, right? So I'm going to copy that, come back up here and go into Story, select Style Sheet, paste that into my Style Sheet, close that, right? You see here we can also put in some custom JavaScript if we wanted to. You know, there's other things we could do here. But I think, again, for just a first taste of this, this is more than enough. And now when we go ahead and test from here, you'll see, right, I've changed it to our sans serif font. I've made our buttons into more of our green color that we've been using in other things, right? So, yeah, so that's just some simple CSS changes that we can do. I've also noticed I actually hid the switch theme link right here because I didn't want them, if I'm customizing the CSS, I don't want them to switch the themes of the Chatbook or whatever it is that it's putting in there. So the last thing you have to think of is how do you put this in a project, right? And so to put it in a project, you would likely just want to go to, how do we do this here? Let's double click in here, story. I didn't even test this before I did this. Let me pause the video. Right, so we just go to build, we go to publish to file, and this is going to be the same way that you can, I think, change computers, right? There's this export as TWE, you know, I think maybe the TWE is what you would go between computers, right? I think you can just do it as an HTML and upload it again to another thing and it'll be fine. But we have the HTML file, right? So everything's just built in one self-contained file. So, right, I can just open that and just play it in my thing. So what would I do there? Let's take a look at what the code looks like. Right, it looks like a big, ugly code here. Your best bet is probably putting this up on your GitHub and serving it as an iframe. Because this is pretty ugly and I think would choke tilde in a custom HTML, right? Because it's not a true, it's kind of got its own thing going on, right? Yeah. So that is it. That is building a narrative with Twine.